king.
Hello, hi Adam. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. Sorry, I realized I hadn't actually shared the link and everything, so I just needed to take care of that. How's everybody doing? I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And, well, got a bunch of options here. For one thing, I wanted just to update you on the Inessa Armand translation project, because I had suspected I was being throttled, and so I decided to do a little bit of experimenting, because the posts I was doing on the project, trying to fundraise for the project and everything, were getting zero fucking engagement. Hello, Raven G, good to see you. Normally my posts on Facebook get a fair bit of engagement, more than a non-zero amount, certainly. But everything I was posting related to that was getting just nothing, unless I tagged people in it, so I decided to just try a few things out. And so it turns out, yeah, it is actually Facebook is systematically throttling posts related to the project for whatever reason. I seem to have happened upon something that is allowing it to be seen a little bit more. But so signal boosting, again, very much appreciated. It's going to be quite essential to making this thing work. So I'm just going to drop this video again, which also has information on how to support the project other than signal boosting, but into chat. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to make all that work, and ideas are very much welcome. So we've got all sorts of different interesting bullshit to look at here. Let's see, that Jimmy Dore thing we already looked at. Well, we looked at part of it, and it was just getting a little bit repetitively horrible. We've got, fake video maker James O'Keefe is going on Jimmy Dore. That should be good. Bernie wants the left to get it together for democracy. And then, let's see, Chile, Estado fallido, de El Villega, genocidio según Vallejo, and fucking Fernando Vallejo, if anyone should weigh in on the topic of what is genocide, fucking Fernando Villegas is absolutely the person to be talking about it, because he's a fucking fascist fuck. Okay, just realized I had this in the wrong window. Wanted to make sure. Hell. Okay, that's not good. That is not what I wanted. Yeah. Well, I understand. If you don't, you don't. It's one of many ways. And I'm just appreciative of anyone who can. Supported in any way, really. But, okay, so... Oh, hello, River Rune as well. What have we got here? Genocidio según Vallejo. This is gonna be Villegas saying, it's gonna be bullshit. I mean, ¿qué clase de país le vamos a dejar a los haitianos from el desahogo político? He's a person who sucks. We've got some PragerU bullshit on Gaza. We got some PragerU bullshit defending Chaya Reichik. Hello, Hail Satine. We've got a color asking David Pacman what he would do in Gaza. Hey, Noriaguara, ¿cómo estás? So we've got a bunch of options here. We've also got Como Salvador Allende empobreció a los chilenos from how Salvador Allende impoverished Chile by some sort of right-wing asshole from Spain. We've got all sorts of things here. Woke cartoon roasted for promoting theft and crime. Wokeism only makes sense if you lie to yourself. That's from Pim Tool. Any preferences anyone has? I'm very open to them. We already looked at that. Trying to remove the things after I've watched them on here, because this is a huge this playlist is massive. It's like 600. The Allende one, that's going to be in Spanish, just so everybody knows. I've been wanting to do more Spanish language content, but and then also Intervención Militar. But so if everyone is cool with that, I could definitely do some of that. Have a look and see if it's any good. If it's like, it might be boring as hell, but certainly give it a go. Never looked at this particular creator. Where the hell did it even go now? Vamos a... Let's see, the Allende thing. 18 minutes. And... where is the Bernie? Where is Xander Hole on Bernie? That's 34 minutes. We could... Okay, we could start out with the Xander Hole Bernie thing. The original three-body problem or the Netflix version? Because there's also an original Chinese version that's available on YouTube for free. I've been gradually working through the books as a way of learning Chinese. Okay, this is Bernie wants the left to get it together for democracy. And I have to say, I applaud Xander Hole's restraint. He did not say lefties.
All right, everybody. This is...
All right, here comes the bullshit.
Breaking news. Breaking news from 3 days ago. We have an announcement.
That's not breaking news then.
From Bernie Sanders.
Wow, so Bernie Sanders said a thing. Well, I mean, I already seeing why this is breaking news from 3 days ago. And I should note, 3 days ago, let me just, I like to give context. This is from 11 days ago, so this is from a fortnight ago. Breaking news from a fortnight ago, Bernie Sanders said a thing.
the man himself, the God Emperor of communism among American leftist Democrat demon rats, as we
What? Like, who's he even talking about now?
call ourselves.
Okay, he's calling himself. Okay, neat.
He simply called this video "Democracy is at Stake." Now, I've been talking for a while now about how we very much have to focus our attention on defeating the Republican Party. They are just getting too powerful and too, like, steadfast in their desire to eliminate our rights.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really great how having Biden in the White House has prevented them doing that. Oh shit, I'm being told by my producers that actually it has not prevented them doing that. They have actually gone fucking hog wild over the past several years, and there's no sign of the Democrats at the federal level trying to do anything about it.
For us to allow them to take power again, I mean, one Trump term has led to a conservative supermajority within the Supreme Court that killed Roe v. Wade, and that's just where they're starting.
And who then declined to provide any kind of statutory protection for it at the federal level so that it can be held over our heads like a sword of Damocles no matter what?
Yeah, we gotta really make sure we're focused on what matters here. And so Bernie has put out a call for his supporters to get behind Biden and the Democratic Party, because as always, the foremost goal of every American should be to prevent the spread and takeover of fascism. So let's watch.
Well, okay, I would agree that that's a good goal. Why do you think that what's, like, Biden's just another way for fascism to take over, though? I mean, it's already fucking happening. And if the Democrats were really against fascism, if they were really, like, trying to stop it, one thing they could do, because I've been thinking about this, one thing that they could do is, like, not keep on sending all this money so that all these fascists can get more cops to enforce all their fascist shit. Like, you can't, these abortion bans and these fucking bans on the existence of trans people, none of that stuff is worth shit if you don't have cops to enforce it. So one of the things the Democrats could do, since they're totally serious about fighting fascism, is maybe not keep drowning the cops in money. Maybe it's time to not spend money on the cops. Maybe they've got enough money. I mean, motherfuckers are, like, chasing after shoplifting suspects with helicopters and drones and SWAT teams. That's a lot of money to spend on trying to run down a guy who's accused, presumed innocent, of stealing maybe some Doritos and ice cream. Maybe it seems like they already got enough money.
And thanks very much for joining me. In case you haven't heard, there's an election coming up this November.
Wow, I'm glad he brought that up. Because I haven't heard that except every single fucking day since the last one.
I've heard it's the most important election in the modern history of our country.
They said that about the last one. They said that about the one before that. Every single one has been the most important, and every single one has been less important. I mean, because there's been less of an alternative there each time.
Guys, I will be so upset if Bernie dies before I get to meet him. If I don't get to meet Bernie Sanders, you guys are going to get a whole stream that's just going to be me screaming into a pillow the
How would that differ from your usual streams, though, Xanderhole?
Entire time. Like, it's just going to be me. I'm just going to be screaming into a pillow until my lungs, like, until I can't speak anymore. For, like, a whole, like, day-long stream.
Like, if Sanders was serious about this, and remember, Sanders cosplays as an independent. But for all intents and purposes, he's a Democrat. He votes with them on everything that matters. He gets to have seniority and committee memberships as if he were a Democrat. The Democrats do not fund candidates to run against him for his seat. Now, so as a nominal independent who wants to avoid Trump, could go and say, you know, the Democrats are fucking this up. The Democrats are handing this to Trump, and the only way that's going to change is if they change course and maybe find somebody that people don't all hate because he's a genocidal fuck.
Now, I fully understand that while President Biden has some very significant accomplishments, which he has every right to be proud of, there are a number of areas where the administration's response to important issues has been inadequate, or in the case of Gaza, dead wrong.
It took him like 3 months of mass murder before he would even say that. If you go back, I mean, he got a lot of fucking applause when he finally said there needs to be what he would consider a ceasefire. You go back to the beginning of this, when everybody who was paying attention knew enough to know that there was a genocide that was going to happen, because Israeli officials just came right out and said, yeah, we're going to do genocide right now. That's the plan. And all he would say is, oh, a ceasefire, that's just helping Hamas. And it's like, fuck you, man.
In my view, and the view of most progressives...
Although I will say that is like the most critical of Biden I think I've ever heard him be.
Like this, no one's gonna get to do the So, like, guys, what's happening in Gaza is horrific.
Yeah, I love how it's just what's happening. And nobody's doing it. It's just happening.
And it is a tragedy that needs to be stopped.
Well, yeah, I mean, last time I heard you talking, you were complaining about how leftists were hurting Joe Biden's feelings by insisting on stopping it.
But something that I've noticed is that much with every movement that gets a lot of steam, there are grifters and dishonest actors who try to weaponize the sincerity and passion with which people advocate for that issue.
Yeah, tell us more about grifters, Xander Hall.
In order to promote much worse or radically non-productive ideas.
What is a non-productive idea? What about the people who, the grifters who actually try to tell people they really shouldn't pay so much attention to the genocide? What about those grifters? What about, like, I mean, I know what I'm looking at one right now, actually, on the screen. He does everything he can to sort of trivialize it, and even spouts pro-Israel talking points.
And so, you've got a lot of people right now who have, like, used what's happening in Gaza to unironically argue that Bernie has done nothing to, like, at all.
Well, no, I mean that's giving him credit. He's actually done harm.
Really, to push for, like, a ceasefire, and that he hasn't, like, spoken out against Israel?
Well, the thing is, until very recently, he hadn't. And in fact, his record on Israel sucks shit. At least since, I don't know about, back in the 80s when he was in Burlington. Overall, his best positions on, like, geopolitical issues and imperialism date back to when he was the mayor of Burlington. And but ever since he made his deal with the Democrats, he has been very much on side with whatever the U.S. line is. And he has not actually been anything remotely that could be considered an anti-Zionist by any stretch of the imagination.
Bernie has been one of the most outspoken people within all of our government, within all of Washington, against
That's setting the bar so low that you actually couldn't get under it.
Israel and against the genocide in Gaza. He has been one of the
No, he isn't.
forefront people calling it a genocide.
No, he isn't. Oh, okay, now I'm curious. Has he actually done that? Has he, in fact, called it a genocide? Bernie Sanders genocide. Okay, here we go.
In your view, is what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide?
In my view, it is absolutely disgraceful, horrible, and I'm doing, as a United States Senator, everything I can to end it.
Okay, this is from February 19th. He's talking with Ash Sarkar of Novara Media.
And where I'm sitting is, and I don't know how many people know this, every year the United States provides about $3.5 billion in military aid to Israel. On top of that, there is a bill. I was supposed to be here earlier. Couldn't come because a bill came up for, not just all for Israel, $95 billion, including $14 billion for Israel. And I have led the opposition to that. I do not want to see the United States.
He's really finding a lot of words here with which to answer a yes/no question.
Implicit in what Netanyahu and his right-wing lunatic friends are doing right now to the Palestinian people. So my job right now, see if we can get the humanitarian aid immediately in there and work out, as complex and difficult as it is, some type of long-term solution to what's going on there.
But do you buy the South African case at the International Court of Justice that what Israel is doing in Gaza constitutes genocide or genocidal acts?
I think, look, we can argue about definitions. It is horrible. Right now, 29,000 people have been killed.
Also, he said in a humanitarian ceasefire. Remember, by February, the official line of the Biden administration, they had realized when Raven, when did he do that? Because everything I've heard has been him avoiding calling it that. Like, the ceasefire, again, this is what happened was the administration realized that their position of outright rejecting the idea of rejecting the use of the word ceasefire was toxic waste. So they started to use ceasefire to mean what they had previously called a humanitarian pause. So when he says a humanitarian ceasefire, he's talking about a humanitarian pause. He's not talking about ending the thing.
And some 70,000 have been injured. Some 65% of the housing units have been destroyed or damaged. And I am worried right now, and I almost wonder why I'm in the UK and not back in the US dealing with this stuff, is that we have hundreds of thousands of children are facing starvation. That's what I have to work on right now.
But if one agrees that it is a genocide, it means that other states have a legal right and duty to prevent genocidal acts being carried out.
But see, we can talk about that.
Yeah, see, this is, okay. I'm not going to play the entire thing here, but he avoided calling it the entire time a genocide. And so, let me see. I mean, okay, February 20th, we also have a Haaretz article say about him not calling it a genocide. February 8th. Okay. Okay, so that's somebody else using the word genocide. Yeah, like literally. Nothing. He has not said this. Like literally, he has not said this ever. There is no evidence of him saying that. So, I mean, what he just said is bullshit.
And calling for a ceasefire.
No, again, not a ceasefire. I mean, let's just stick with the terms. Let's not play bait and switch here. What he's calling for is a humanitarian pause. It's just now they've decided they're going to call that a ceasefire and pretend that they're asking for the same thing that people are demanding. And I have to say, it was a tactical mistake to use the term ceasefire in the first place. Because a ceasefire is nothing to do. It does not belong in a discussion about genocide. That's why it isn't mentioned in the ICJ's rulings. Because a ceasefire is a mutual thing in an armed conflict. A genocide is not an armed conflict. So the thing to call for is just for them to fucking stop. I mean, just stop the genocide. And I think using the word ceasefire was, it was an error, I think, in retrospect. Precisely because people did mean to stop the genocide. People did mean for this to just fucking end. Yeah, Yeah, I mean, which the U.S. is breaching. The U.S. is now in breach of a Security Council resolution, and Israel is in breach of a Security Council resolution. And so the U.S. has turned around and said, yeah, actually, it turns out Council resolutions are non-binding now. That's the thing we just made up. I mean, it's complete bullshit. They are not non-binding. They are binding.
In fact, because of it, AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, is going to fund, what is it, like $400 million to knock the Squad out of their seats in the coming election because they've been so outspoken against Israel. It's going to be one of the...
Well, I mean, like one or two of them. I mean, Rashida Tlaib has, Ilhan Omar has. The others have actually been kind of iffy on it. I mean, AOC has run hot and cold on the whole thing.
Most well-funded political efforts ever.
No, I mean, it really isn't, though.
And it's going to be to knock the Squad out of power because they dared to go against...
It would knock them out of power. What power are they in now? Exactly. What power are... There are like 5 people. There are literally 5 people who could be even called, with a little bit of a squint, progressives in Congress. They have no fucking power. Their only power, if they were to choose to make use of it, would be to use the platform that they have as a result of being in Congress to denounce all the right-wing shit the Democrats are doing. And that is a thing that overwhelmingly they have declined to do. Like, that is the one thing that would be useful if they were to get up there and denounce the stuff and say, yeah, actually, this is horrible what they're doing. But overwhelmingly, that has not happened. I mean, that's not to say that what Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have been saying has not been... I mean, that has actually kind of been that, at least on this issue, although Rashida Tlaib has also, accepted Zionist propaganda about a lot of other things and voted for some pretty awful bullshit there. But, yeah.
Israel's hegemony.
The United States should not be giving another nickel to Netanyahu and his right-wing extremist government.
Notice one of the other things that's being done here. This is all about making it about Netanyahu, which is bullshit. This is not just Netanyahu. It is not just parties that are considered right-wing extremist under Israeli standards. Benny Gantz, who is the closest thing that they have in Israeli politics to a leftist, he's in the war cabinet signing off on all of this. So this is not a Netanyahu thing. This is a fucking Zionist regime thing. If Netanyahu were out tomorrow and Gantz took over, it would still continue because Gantz wants it to continue.
To continue their horrific war against the people of Gaza. We also need to do a lot more work in addressing the massive level of income and wealth inequality, low wages, the housing crisis,
to name just a few things that Biden has done shit about.
Our dysfunctional healthcare system, totally inadequate childcare, student debt, and the absolute need for affordable higher education among...
Affordable. That is such a bullshit term. See, if you say something is free at the point of use, that is immediately verifiable. But we start talking about affordable. Affordable to who? It's probably going to be affordable to somebody no matter what.
Among many other issues.
Somebody can always afford this shit.
I feel like a lot of progressives who won't vote for Biden because of Gaza need to understand that Trump would glass Gaza in day one.
Yeah, that is... again, this is such a ridiculous take because everything that we know says if Biden keeps up what he is doing right now, there may not be anyone left alive in Gaza for Trump to do anything to. They don't have that long. Fucking UN nutritional experts are saying they've never seen a population's nutritional status decline this rapidly. I'm seeing figures. There was a great piece. Where was it? Okay. Hang on. That's where it was. Just Security. I'm gonna drop this link in chat. It's a good article because it explains why so many people are talking about, like, looming famine. Is not what Biden is doing. See, the reason they talk about, like, looming famine is that the indicators are designed to be extremely, extremely conservative on this. Like, to the extent that famines are only really declared retrospectively under these standards. So, essentially, yeah, the article is a very good detailed thing from from an expert in the field talking about why none of that should suggest that there is anything but the absolute utmost urgency.
Guys, the same type of lefties who won't vote against Trump are the types of lefties who fell for the conservative talking point that, like, the Russia collusion thing was a hoax.
That wasn't just a right-wing talking point, though, and clearly the Democrats didn't believe it either. Because the Democrats, the same Democrats who were claiming that Trump was like a Russian agent and all that stuff, never mind that Trump took a more confrontational stance towards Russia than even Obama had. He actually escalated the confrontation. In particular by sending weapons to Ukraine, which the Obama administration's position had been that was an unnecessary provocation and a bad idea. He sent weapons to Ukraine. He actually, like, scrapped some nuclear non-proliferation related treaties specifically to escalate the confrontation. Now, if the Democrats believed that he was a Russian agent, the thing to do would be to shut him down using all means available in Congress. In particular, you wouldn't want to give him any kind of new, like, surveillance powers or weapons or anything like that. I mean, if you want to see what you can do, what a legislature can do if they really genuinely oppose and consider a president a danger to the country and shit, look at what the fucking Chilean parliament did to Allende. Like, he could not get anything through. Like, they stopped him at every fucking, every fucking pass. Every one of his ministers ended up getting hauled in front of there in impeachment proceedings. They just basically bogged him down to the extent that there was, like, fuck all that could be done. Even though they did not actually have the votes to actually impeach him. So, I mean, they could have done a whole lot if they genuinely believed all that.
Like, how many lefties have you met that, like, when you tell them, hey, by the way, you know the Russia collusion thing with Trump's campaign wasn't, like, a hoax? Like,
well, so he's saying
a bunch of his campaign people got, like arrested and sent to prison.
Not over that, though, actually. That's the thing. They were sent to, there were a whole lot of people got arrested and sent to prison, but it was on other charges.
Because they were provably colluding with Russia to help Trump win. And to, like, spread dirt.
That is not actually
the Democratic Party. They just couldn't tie it to Trump himself, just his higher-ups within his campaign. Like, people are surprised, even on the left, when you tell them that.
Because if anyone's paid any attention at all at the time, they'd know that that just wasn't the case.
Because, for one, the indictments are boring and no one wants to read that shit.
Yeah, that's what he's banking on. He probably didn't read them. I did.
And it's, like, not the most entertaining topic because Trump didn't end up in prison. And two,
and isn't
the
going
Republicans
to.
have repeated over and over again, it was a hoax, it was a hoax, it was a nothing burger so much. And because Trump never ended up behind bars, it's kind of hard, even as a lefty, to not kind of think, like, okay, maybe on that one.
I mean, and let's just remember, the Russiagate thing also included claiming that Occupy, Standing Rock, and Black Lives Matter were Russian psyops.
They kind of had a point. So the same type of lefties that unironically believe and fell for the talking point that the Russian collusion was a hoax, the same types of people who are like, the Democrats, like the same types of lefties who are like, the Democrats need to just get over January 6th.
You were talking about very different people.
That kind of lefty. And reminder, these people have been convinced by, like, left-wing, quote-unquote, figures who, if you haven't noticed...
Convinced of what, Xander Hole? Well, I mean, it was... Basically, what happened, what it did was instill this fascist discourse of accusing one's political opponents of being foreign agents, which we've actually seen deployed against the anti-genocide campaign here. Nancy Pelosi can't decide whether to accuse us of being fully paid up Chinese agents or Russian agents.
Have a pretty clear financial interest in Trump winning. Guys.
Yeah, motherfucker, you have a financial interest in Trump winning. Trump was actually really good for your brand because your whole thing was that because you're an ex-Nazi, you are the one who has this unique insight into how to beat Nazis.
Reminder, once again, this is just from whenever the election had just ended. Within the first 100 days of Biden's presidency, TV news ratings, online readership plunges during Biden's first 100 days. This has continued all the way up till the election here.
Yeah, well, yeah, because people... it turns out there's this thing, you're using it right now, Xander Hall, called the internet. People, for the most part, aren't watching fucking cable. They aren't subscribing to, like, Nielsen ratings boxes and shit. People are getting their information from other sources.
Every single outlet, from Fox News to CNN, has suffered under Biden's presidency due to the fact that Biden is just not spicy enough to keep up the level of wall-to-wall political coverage that...
Well, but the thing is, you could do that if you wanted to. Like, it's not that there's nothing there, it's that there's no interest in doing anything with what is there. Like, you could still, take the kids in cages thing. Remember the media used to pretend to care about that shit? That's still going on. They could be doing wall-to-wall coverage on that, but they're not. They could be doing wall-to-wall coverage on how the fascist movement in the U.S. is absolutely just inextricably intertwined with the cops, and how when you send money to the cops, you're basically sending money to Nazis. There's so much shit they could be doing. It's not that there's nothing there. There's lots of stuff there. In fact, there's literally everything that was there when Trump was there. They could be, like, pretending to give a shit about the fact that Biden has continued Trump's policy of just forcing people to get COVID. These are editorial choices. There has been an editorial choice to go from this mode of presenting everything as a constant emergency to trying to calm motherfuckers down and get them to forget about things by not talking about them on the theory that out of sight, out of mind. It's not that there's nothing there. Like, there's lots that's there. It's just that they don't want to talk about it, so they don't.
That was standard under Trump.
Hello, Badger.
And so you have to remember, when these left-wing figures tell you Trump and Biden aren't different,
yeah, I mean, I do not think that anything is going to happen. Because the thing is, there are a lot of people, including people who are promoting, like, this prosecution against Trump, but for all the least of what he did. But, who really do not want a precedent of a president actually being prosecuted and going to prison for his crimes. Because, like, I mean, if you're Joe Biden, do you want there to be a precedent for, like, going to prison for relatively minor crimes compared to, well, everything else Trump did when you're committing genocide? Do you want that precedent? Does anyone want the precedent of being able to, a U.S. president actually being prosecuted? I mean, nobody who has any direct influence over those decisions is comfortable with having that precedent, or we would have had it already. Because every single U.S. president, every single, modern U.S. president has done at least a few things that get them sent to prison if the law were actually applied.
Think about how many of those left-wing, figures that are telling you that maybe make more money, get more views, and are more relevant when a Republican is in office.
I mean, that's you also, Xander Hole. You do really well when a Republican is in office. And here you are promoting Joe Biden, who more or less guarantees that a Republican will be in office. But the thing is, what he's accidentally stumbling on is an important point, actually, which is that we, at this point, have a choice between a president who will do horrible fascist things and liberals will be kind of okay with it and make excuses and, say, oh, he needs time or he can't help it, there's nothing to be done or whatever, or somebody doing fucked up fast shit and liberals are freaking out and, saying we have to stop this motherfucker absolutely has to be stopped. Well, I mean, when you start to look at it from that angle, it actually becomes a more complicated picture, actually, because the real question is, how do we stop this stuff? And I think I don't have a definitive answer here in terms of whether it is necessarily better to have liberals at least joining in the outrage or to have them not. Although it seems like a lot of stuff didn't get achieved one way or another. See you later, Badger. I can understand that. Good to see you, though. I think this is your first time in chat. But what he's saying here actually is that basically people are more likely, liberals in particular, are more likely to be outraged if the front man for all this fast shit is somebody who they are capable of viewing as the enemy. And I think fundamentally the real problem is that people do not view them all as the enemy. I think that a much healthier way of looking at electoral politics in this country in particular would be to say, whoever gets in is representing our adversaries. That's who we have to beat.
Maybe think about for just a second if those people are protecting their own interests by telling their audiences to go against their own political values in order to prolong a little bit like the same thing the Republicans did with the
go against their own political values. How exactly? Because I mean, I think the point you're making is that you're asking people to go against their own political values.
Border funding bill, right? They refused to support the border funding bill because then that would be solving the problem, quote.
No, but it wouldn't be, and it's good that it failed. The fucking border funding bill was horrible, and now Biden is doing it by executive order. He discovered executive orders.
Quote, under Biden, and they need the problem to exist during the election for Trump to get elected.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting people. It's always nice to see new people here. Yeah, well, I mean, it may not be, it's a leftist value, but I didn't know about a lefty value. It may not be a lefty value. No, because I don't know of any lefty values specifically.
For immigration to be an effective wedge issue. And so in the same way, it seems like a lot of these media outlets and a lot of lefty figures that go against Biden and the Democrats, it feels like they are maybe in that same boat,
Or maybe some of them are people who would be harmed by a border solution bill that was going to screw refugees and make the border even deadlier than it already is. It already is the deadliest peacetime border on the planet. And maybe the way to actually, if you wanted to deal with the issue, is to just come right out and say, yeah, the Republicans are lying. When they claim that there's an open border, they're lying. When they claim that immigrants are the problem, they're lying. Actually, and you say, yeah, actually what these people need is a way to get into the country safely, because a lot of them are running for their lives and they have every right to do so. And just outright, I mean, if you wanted to actually deal with the issue, the thing to do would be to outright say, no, what they're saying is bullshit. What they're saying is a problem is not a problem. The real problem is that we have this murderous fucking border militarization going on, and it's killing people who have every right to seek assistance and seek protection here.
Maybe they're kind of just trying to get Trump back in office, so the internet is aflame with political discourse again, and there's stuff to talk about wall to wall, 24/7.
Okay, chat. My experience has not been that it's been difficult to find things to talk about 24/7. In fact, I have to say, I mean, and now this, sample size comes into this, but actually, my stream only started regularly breaking double digits in concurrent views during this presidency, because I've found all kinds of shit to talk about, actually. So yeah, the most growth I've had has actually been since 2020, I think.
But while we may have our disagreements with Biden, it's important to take a minute to think about what a Trump presidency would mean to our country and, in fact, the world.
True.
If you believe in democracy, and I know you all do.
So much so that it would be really nice if we eventually got to have some in the U.S.
If you
Guys, how's the volume? I feel like the video's really quiet. And you guys won't tell me when the volume is bad, so I have to ask. Feel like it's quiet. Yeah, turn vid up? Okay.
believe in
Okay, that was loud as fuck.
science, if you believe in justice and workers' rights,
Yeah, vote for the guy who busted the railway unions.
let me be very clear. The next several months,
Yeah, he seems to think that the universe is made up of content creators who are all as grifty as he is, and all as flexible in their values. Like, I mean, when he talks about Gaza, he never does anything to talk about the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't come into it. I mean, except for one time he did blame them for why it's so hard to get a ceasefire, as opposed to say the fact that the U.S. and Israel reject the idea. He did do that, but for the most part, you don't hear this in terms of the fact that there are human beings in Gaza, and they're experiencing the most horrifying, fucked up atrocity that we've seen in this extremely horrible century. When he talks about the border bill, he doesn't like platform, I don't know, like immigrant rights groups, refugee rights groups, anyone like that. They had a lot to say about that horrible fucking border bill, but he didn't give them a look in either. It's like everybody's either a content creator or a politician. That's like his entire universe, because those are the only people he's familiar with.
will be the most important in modern American history. Yes, Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He's a racist.
Yeah, I mean, see, again, this is not something that you can use as a unique selling point. I mean, fucking Joe Biden, first of all, he almost got kicked out of law school for cheating on exams. Then he turned around. His first attempt at being a presidential candidate failed when it turned out that he had plagiarized. I mean, this is pathetic. God, what is his name? God, what the fuck is the guy's name? So he was a Welsh Labour politician. Like, let me see. Oh, Biden. Kinnock, that's Neil Kinnock. He plagiarized Neil Kinnock's speech, and it's remarkable because Neil Kinnock's speech was all about how, thanks to the Labour Party, he was the first person in thousands of years in his family ever to go to university. And Biden took that verbatim, even though he was not, in fact, the first person in his family to go to university. I love Wales too. I've spent a good deal of time there. The Kinnocks are not one of the reasons I like Wales. They suck shit. They're just right-wing assholes. But which is why Biden would plagiarize them. I mean, Biden has told some absolute whoppers. I mean, there was the time he claimed he got arrested in South Africa trying to see Mandela when he was held on Robben Island, and it turned out he'd never been arrested in South Africa, and he'd also never attempted to see Nelson Mandela in Robben Island. Oh, he's racist and sexist. I mean, again, we're coming up with the things they have in common. Why aren't they running mates, really?
Racist, sexist, a xenophobe, a homophobe, and a religious bigot.
Okay. I mean, again, we're talking about what they have in common.
Yup. Donald Trump has denied the election defeat that he experienced and is undermining
Turn it down very slightly? Okay.
American democracy every day. Peddling conspiracy theories and
I mean, there was also the time he spent decades claiming that his first wife and one of his kids, they were killed in an accident, which, according to the investigation that was carried out at the time, was not preventable. Like, the truckie who was driving the truck had the right of way. There was no way he could have stopped it. And there was no alcohol involved in any of it. But that did not stop Biden smearing this guy as a hopeless drunk every fucking chance he got on the campaign trail for decades. In fact, the guy died before Biden would finally apologize, not publicly, but just on the phone in 2009 after he'd just become VP to the guy's daughter. You know, I mean, he lies about shit that there's no need to lie about. Oh yeah, you're not black if you don't vote for me. I mean, that fucking hell, yeah. I mean, that was fucked up.
Converting the Republican Party into a cult of the individual. Yep. Donald Trump has contempt for a free media and has encouraged violence and the never-before-seen use of the military and federal agents against U.S. citizens.
No, that's not never before seen. George W. Bush did that shit. I mean, are we forgetting about Jose Padilla, who was held, a U.S. citizen, was abducted by a Navy goon squad and tortured for several years. His lawyer, when his lawyer was finally allowed to actually see him, because the U.S. government went to court to deny him a lawyer, to deny anyone access, to prevent him being able to have a habeas corpus petition filed on his behalf. When he finally got to have a lawyer, that lawyer said, this guy's obviously been drugged out of his mind. He has no connection to reality. And now, at that point, what should have happened is he should have been taken to hospital and helped to recover. And instead, he was railroaded into a plea agreement that he probably couldn't comprehend because, again, he'd spent 4 years in solitary being tortured and drugged. And so now he's doing a long prison term. Hey, Phoenix. So yeah, not exactly unprecedented to see the use of the military against U.S. citizens.
But if you believe Donald Trump's first term was dangerous,
he's reading this.
I want you to think for a moment about what a second term would look like.
Yep.
If Donald Trump is elected this November, the fight against climate change is over.
There isn't a fight against climate change at the federal level now. I mean, Biden has been bragging about setting fossil fuel extraction records.
Period.
This is fundamental.
No, it isn't.
This is
I mean, it's worth remembering. I mean, the IPCC report that came out several years ago said, if we don't get to net zero by 2030, then there's no chance of avoiding the absolute worst case scenario. There are indications that that may have actually been optimistic, but so Bernie Sanders in the last election, his or was it? I forget. Was this 20? Yeah, I think this was 2020. Like his, this was the most climate protective proposal in the entire race, was to get to net 30 by 2035. Biden had initially said 2050, and then he moved down to 2035, all of which is kind of fucking meaningless, because the whole point of the IPCC's report is we got to get it down there by 2030, or really fucked up shit that is going to become completely inevitable. And yeah, there is a possibility it just is inevitable, but here's the thing. I mean, I'm sure there's some people thinking that, and I occasionally have that thought as well. But the thing is, it suits the fossil fuel industry to have people believe it's just there's nothing to be done. Because if people think there's nothing to be done, nobody will do anything. It is despair, the assumption that there's nothing to be done is actually a much more useful position than people thinking maybe there's still time. I would rather see us fucking try to sort the shit out than assume that there's nothing can be done.
Fundamental reality, a surprising amount of people don't recognize for some fucking reason. The simple fact that we have reached the tipping point.
Well, maybe part of why they don't realize that is because people like Joe Biden make a point of not bringing that up much, because it suits them not to have any sense of urgency around it, because they have no intention of doing anything about it. Because, like COVID, like the fucking genocide, there is no interest from above in doing anything about this, because it suits them to, in their absolutely ridiculous short-term mentality, it suits them to allow things to continue as they are.
When it comes to climate change, there is no reversing it if we don't go carbon negative in the next, years. The next, I don't even know how many years. I don't even...
I do. It's 6. It's 6 years. And perhaps you can remind Sanderhole, when Bernie Sanders said he was proposing to go carbon neutral. And remember, that report was before last year, which was such a freakishly warm year. Scientists are having trouble explaining exactly what the mechanism would be.
Even feel comfortable putting a number on it, because it might not be more than 2.
Well, then, so if you agree that we have to actually get that sorted within, okay, we'll go with 2 years. 2 years, I'm cool with saying 2 years. Because actually all we would really need to do to get there is to get back to the emissions levels of the 1970s. The overwhelming majority of the emissions that have gotten us to where we are from the neoliberal period, and so much of these emissions are from complete bullshit, from stuff that does not improve anybody's lives. It just happens to be very profitable. I mean, from supply chains that are designed to just maximize the use of low wage areas and low regulation areas and shit like that. I mean, so much of this stuff, the entire fucking business model of Apple, where they just design stuff to break as quickly as possible and to have to be completely replaced. There's so many things that could be done, but the thing is, within capitalism, we can't do them. And that's why all these capitalist fucking politicians are just pretending there's nothing to be done. I mean, it's a different matter when if you go to the smaller countries that have smaller contributions, because like there's not all that much they can do, so there's a bit more freedom to just admit the nature of the problem in places like, I don't know, like New Zealand or something like that. But in the US, it's true. I mean, we'll say 2 years. So what that means is we just have to fucking fight and bring this system down. And it is absolutely pointless to be worrying about who is going to be in charge of this climate-killing system. Yeah, well, Biden has done much against against helping for climate change. I'm glad you're not giving up. I'm having a rough go of it as well. People were supposed to pay me and haven't.
We lose the fight against climate change if Trump gets elected.
We're losing it right now. I mean, Biden has promised he's already surrendered the fight against climate change.
Just, there's no saving it. There's no going back. There's no do-overs. We lost.
Like, literally, fucking Bernie Sanders, for that matter, was already putting up a white flag of surrender to the issue of climate change with his, like, radical Green New Deal proposal. Because it didn't even try to get carbon negative by 2030, which was what the IPCC said. Let alone, by, I don't know, 2026. He said 2 years. So, basically, the entire U.S. political class is just ecocidal, is in agreement that the long-term inhabitability of the only planet we've got is not something that they're all that bothered about. And maybe the issue then is we should not allow ourselves to be ruled by them rather than choosing one piece of shit over another.
Humanity lost the fight against climate change if Trump gets reelected. There's no, we can fix it. There's no, it can be recovered from. This is our...
You're sounding very upbeat, Phoenix, and I'm really glad to hear it.
Last chance. Maintaining a Democrat in office is the best chance to actually have a fighting chance.
No, but, okay, so tell us what wonderful climate shit. What are we on track to be, when are we going to be carbon negative if things keep up the way Biden's been doing them, Xander Hall? Because my understanding is we're on track to be carbon negative sometime around St. Fuckoff's Day in the year of never.
Against climate change.
It's the end, and the people of this planet will have lost.
Yep.
Not only does Donald Trump believe climate change is a hoax, but he has and will once again appoint agency leaders and judges.
And to be clear, by the way, it's not that in 2 years, like, the seas are going to consume, like, Miami and all the coastal cities or whatever. It's that after 2 years, we've passed the no-return point. That even upon going carbon negative, the amount of damage we done is irreversible, and we...
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, there is still benefit in going carbon negative. But it's much less benefit. The question at this point is how much damage gets done. And, and it's possible we need to actually be doing this at a much higher speed. But the thing is, you can't make an argument for voting for Democrats when you acknowledge this issue. See, the people he's standing understand this, which is why they don't acknowledge this issue. Fucking Bernie Sanders does not acknowledge this issue, not in those terms. He rejects the IPCC report. He rejects the, and Biden rejects the IPCC report. So, the question is, to me, when you look at that, again, is it better to have someone who rhetorically acknowledges that climate change is a big problem, but at the same time manufacturers consent to do fuck all about it? Or is it better in the sense of maybe increasing the likelihood that people will understand how much we're on our own to have somebody who doesn't even pretend? And I'm not saying I have the answer, though, but I think it's a question that needs to be asked.
We will hit those worst-case scenarios. Like, inevitably. There's just no going back from that point. We'll hit the critical sort of like tipping point where there's just no going back, sort of day after tomorrow style.
Who will undermine our ability to move toward energy efficiency and sustainable energy.
See, it would really be nice if we were actually showing any sign that we're moving in that direction now.
And if the United States retreats...
Obviously, it won't be exactly like day after tomorrow, but it will hit that, like, tipping point where it's like, well, we put it off too long.
Also, I mean, he keeps on using tipping point in this context as a singular thing. It's not. Climate scientists refer to tipping points in the plural. Like, when the permafrost started belching methane a couple of years ago, that was a climate tipping point. The point of the tipping points is, of course, they set off chain reactions that can potentially accelerate things well beyond our control.
From the fight against climate change, countries like China, India, and the rest of the world will follow.
I mean, I love how he acts as if the U.S. is leading this in the first place. The fact is, like, the U.S. is nowhere near the U.S. is way in the rear guard on this. China shows more actual interest in doing something about climate change than the U.S. Like, pretty much all. I mean, it's actually kind of hard to find a country with a significant sized economy that is less interested in changing anything to deal with climate change than the U.S.
That would have irreversible...
Phoenix says, if I were a bigger YouTuber, my main political message would be politics isn't just every 4 years, it's ongoing. Yeah, I mean, that's like... I try to make that my key message, too, as a not particularly big YouTuber either. But, I mean... Yeah, I mean, that to me is fundamental. If anything, the more of these elections I live through, the more I feel like they're a distraction and that our energy is better spent actually fighting for the shit we need to be fighting for.
Implications.
And motherfuckers will either come along, the political class will either come along and try to make concessions, or they won't, in which case they need to be swept away.
Ability of our planet for our kids, our grandchildren, and for future generations. If Trump is elected in...
To be fair, like most cynical lefties who don't even like keep up with the news at all and just kind of assume the Democrat in power at any given time is just not doing anything, they'll say Biden hasn't done anything to combat climate change, despite...
Okay, so we finally got our wish. He's going to tell us what Biden did to combat climate change.
By having opened up more permits for green energy production.
Okay, yeah, so he's talking about the I almost said Inflammation Reduction Act. Inflation Reduction Act. The thing about those permits for green energy is they are tied to reciprocal permits for fossil fuel extraction. That is part of why Biden is breaking fossil fuel extraction records. It does not help to just be opening up, like, permits for fucking green energy if you're still using the fucking... if you're actually increasing your reliance on fucking carbon emissions.
In the U.S., and more green energy jobs than any...
that's a great thing to do, actually.
President ever has, ever. And
it's
campaign,
literally
like,
nothing.
His first term hasn't even ended yet. Like, green energy is clearly a priority.
No, it isn't.
Open up more permits for more jobs to be created, more domestic green energy production than any president ever, and by a lot. I'm not talking like, oh, like, you know, he added 10...
yeah, but what about the fossil fuels, Enderhole? I mean, was there any, like, trade-off that you're going to tell us about, maybe? Was there maybe some aspect of that deal that was not great for the climate?
And extra dollars to the budget and the permits and everything, you know? No.
I mean, who gives a fuck if you're making huge amounts of solar panels if at the same time you're massively increasing fossil fuel extraction? I mean...
No. By a lot. Biden is very pro-green energy, and he has not done nothing about climate change.
Yeah, he hasn't done nothing. He hasn't done shit.
He hasn't done enough. I mean, no one's done enough. Humanity hasn't done enough, but...
I tend to think that there are probably people in humanity who have done more, though.
It's very much, like, not nothing.
November.
Yeah, I can understand that as well, Phoenix, in terms of getting those requests. I wouldn't want to be getting those requests on PayPal either, because apart from everything else, I would just feel really bad, because a lot of the time I'm not in a position to do anything about it. It's like when I actually can, I always do. But it's been a shitty few years.
The already obscene levels that we are now experiencing of income and wealth inequality will only get worse.
Well, they're continuing.
In his first administration, Trump signed tax cuts into law where 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%, while at the same time he raised taxes for middle-class families.
Yep.
The thing about the term middle-class families in this context especially is that it includes a lot of millionaires.
This current campaign, Trump has promised to extend
I think my taxes went up because of Trump's tax policy, funnily enough.
those tax cuts for the rich and to lower the corporate tax rate for companies that are making record-breaking profits. If Donald Trump is elected again in November, we can expect him and the Republican Party to escalate the attacks on women's reproductive health in this country. No.
I mean, yeah, but they're already doing that. That's the thing. The thing that we're supposed to be, like, that getting a Democrat in the White House is supposed to give us, it hasn't given us that.
It was not enough for Trump to brag about appointing justices who overturned Roe v. Wade in this country.
One Trump presidency, and we have a conservative supermajority Supreme Court.
Yeah, one Biden presidency, and nothing was done to change that. Like, I mean, he had control of both houses of Congress and the White House. Didn't do shit. Because the Democrats like to be able to hold these things over our heads. That's what they're campaigning over. Either the threat of losing basic human rights, or the promise that maybe they will temporarily give them back. Not actually legislate them, but they'll do some administrative guidance that can be overturned by the next administration unilaterally that says that, yeah, we can have some of our rights back.
It could take decades for the Supreme Court to become even balanced again. It doesn't matter how progressive this country gets. Or who's in
it wouldn't
office.
take decades.
I
mean, it would take adding justices to the court, which it is. There's no constitutional limit on. There's no requirement that the court have a certain number of justices. In fact,
at this point, just one single term of Trump, and we've got decades of a conservative Supreme Court ahead of us. Best case scenario is the rest of the government decides to disregard the Supreme Court. That is technically a thing that can be done.
Well, I mean, it's not a legal thing that can be done. It would not be legal. But one thing that we can do, actually, I mean, never mind the government, we can just disregard the fucking Supreme Court. We just pay them no notice. And just organize to defy them openly. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, all of these laws, all this horrible shit. The idea, these are trial balloons on a certain level still, in the sense that these motherfuckers don't actually know how it's going to play out. They've been like drooling over this moment for decades. But the thing is, we can show them how it plays out. People can show them how it plays out in the different places where they've been enacted. And if it turns out that even trying to enforce this stuff is a massive shitstorm that makes the 2020 uprising look like a walk in the park, then they may lose their appetite for this shit. But of course, that's why there's all these cop cities. Like, because there's an understanding that as things keep getting worse, because we are in a period of managed decline, that is, so things are expected to keep getting worse. That's the plan, for them to keep getting worse. The only thing that is going to keep people at bay is cops who actually have the skills of, like, light infantry.
Technically, theoretically, the entire rest of the government could just see a decision made by the Supreme Court, say no, refuse to enforce it, and codify it, and the Supreme Court can't do anything about it. They have no military or like, force authority to use to enforce their will. It's just sort of the decorum of maintaining...
that would create a constitutional crisis. It's worth noting, I mean, which is... I don't actually think that's a bad thing, but the thing is, he does not understand what he's actually saying. And of course, the question is, will they actually do this? do they, I mean, because what they would be doing if they did that is totally shitting on the judiciary and saying, yeah, the judiciary's bullshit, we don't pay them any notice. But if you do that, like, I mean, what else? You might need, the thing is that the ruling class needs the judiciary sometimes. They need respect for the courts. Because the courts actually mostly help them. The courts tend to do things that they like a lot of the time, which is part of why that's not going to happen, first of all. They're not going to do that. From above, I mean, this idea that, you know, the fucking ruling class is suddenly going to get morally outraged over this stuff, and that's not how this is going to happen. If there was salvation coming from above, we'd have seen it by now. And for another thing, it's like, there's a reason that that's not going to happen, and it's because a constitutional crisis is the sort of thing that causes regimes to collapse. Now, I'm all for this regime finally, you know, getting consigned to the dustbin of history. I think it needs to go. I think we can do better. I think it would be hard to do worse. We could do worse. It is possible. But I think we could also do much better. But, I mean, the idea that the ruling class is going to turn around and go, yeah, fuck the Supreme Court, we're going to ignore them. Have any of them talked about Cop City? Okay, I have not looked for it specifically. But, I mean, I have noticed that I have not heard any mentions of it. Like, fucking, I mean, that, you know, Caleb Muppet, who likes to talk about political repression, he's always talking about January 6th, never says shit about Cop City. You have, and I don't think I've seen fucking Vosh say anything about it. I don't think I've seen, Zanderhol say anything about it. I don't think any of them have said a thing about it, actually.
Our democracy that we kind of decide to go with what the Supreme Court says. But if we get to the point where literally nobody is...
I mean, it's not so much, I mean, a matter of decorum is a weird way to put it. It is, like, literally the way the legal system works. There is a separation of power. You have 3 co-equal branches of government. And if if one branch of the government starts telling the other branches to fuck themselves, then you have institutional crises. And usually the fine art of statecraft is to avoid that happening for the most part, because then your regime can fall apart.
is okay with what the Supreme Court is doing, even within our government. I genuinely don't know. I think the best case scenario truly is we elect enough Democrats that like the Supreme Court's decisions are disregarded. Like they destroy the right for federal protection.
Okay, this is like when Caleb Muppet talks about how eventually, if the line goes up enough, there's communism. Like, how many Democrats does it take to have them suddenly decide that the judiciary does not need to be acknowledged? I don't see that happening. I don't think it's a matter of how many Democrats get in office, because pretty much all of them believe in respecting the courts for the reasons I just explained. Like, they're all there. They all, these are not people who are looking to cause an institutional crisis in the government. I mean, it seems to me, I don't think it's impossible to actually kind of push things in that direction. Not necessarily in a way we'd like, I should say. But it is possible. But that would not be because we elected a huge number of Democrats. It would be because motherfuckers were scared of, the popular response if they actually, enforced and complied with some horrible Supreme Court decision.
Gay marriage, and like the rest of the government, the federal government just ignores it. That's the best case scenario.
He and many other Republicans want to go further. They want a federal abortion ban.
Yes.
And that's what they will strive for if he is elected.
And they will get it.
Which is, again, another reason that you should have somebody popular running against him, and not somebody who is actually, polls worse than him, has actually broken his record for unpopularity. Like, maybe don't have somebody who sucks?
If Donald Trump is elected again, it is likely, and I say this with a heavy heart,
but it is likely that the almost 250-year experiment of American democracy is all but over.
Wait, I mean, that's already silly. I mean, the idea that there was an experiment in something that can be reasonably called democracy in this territory that has lasted that long. I mean, let's be serious here. When the regime was founded, only rich white dudes were allowed to vote. Like, the majority of the population had absolutely no say. So from the point of view of most people in the country, it was just a dictatorship. Then, eventually, like, sort of working class white dudes start to get the vote, but then that still leaves everybody else. And so, yeah, again, still mostly a dictatorship by any normal sense, in the sense that nobody has, most people have no say. You could say, like, starting in about the 1960s with the Voting Rights Act is when you could first start to say that the majority of the population at least had a formal institutional say in who gets to represent the ruling class. Bernie is reading this. This does not feel like he is saying this stuff, like, spontaneously. He seems to be reading it off of something. Yeah, I mean, so if we want to talk about the experiment in democracy, and anything that actually even, like, falls within a reasonable definition of just bourgeois democracy, we're talking about maybe, let's see, a 60-year experiment in democracy, and that's giving it credit. That is giving it serious credit.
Goes without saying that Trump tried to overturn the results of the last presidential election, but his attack on democracy
And he learned from his failure.
goes far deeper than the violence.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to, but the thing is, the reason he failed is that, unlike what he was imitating the U.S. I mean, I don't know if it was conscious or not, but it looked a lot, it was like an imitation of the U.S.-backed coup that brought the white supremacist Yanin Áñez to power in Bolivia. And the thing is that only works if you've actually got the military behind you. And all he had was some cops and Nazi Chewbacca. And yeah, so that was not going to work. It's good that it failed. I mean, But, I mean, we were not on the brink that day. Unless you are saying that there was some reason to believe that the military was actually going to come out on his side. And I don't remember anyone having any suggestion that that was likely. I don't remember anyone thinking that was likely. And, I mean, the military, he was actually pretty unpopular with a lot of senior military people, I seem to remember. So it would actually seem entirely likely that they wouldn't have.
January 6th, 2021. If Trump wins, you can expect more extreme gerrymandering.
We're getting that
more
now.
More election workers being harassed and threatened.
That hasn't stopped with Biden in office.
More young people and people of color being denied their right to participate in elections.
All of this is already going on. Like, nothing has been done to stop it. Yeah, it's going to keep getting worse, but you have to show, if you're going to say that this is going to get worse with the other guy, you have to show how your guy is going to do anything to stop it. And there's been no evidence of that. Like, I mean, our fucking polling stations in Ohio are at this point like ADA hostile. It's not even like ADA neutral. You actually, for the first time, I went in, there were a couple of ballot issues I wanted to vote on, because that's like the one thing I will vote on. And they wanted me to take off my mask. Like, I have avoided COVID for 4 whole years. I live with somebody who is immunocompromised. I have reason to believe that I have elevated risk. Everybody I live with has elevated risk. And, I actually did decide, I decided to make a stand because it was fucking bullshit. And I said, look, I mean, the ADA requires you not to be doing this. Fucking the Ohio Secretary of State cannot override federal law. And they finally allowed, as how they'd allow us to step outside, step back, and briefly remove our masks there, where it was at least somewhat safer. And I managed that, but that's fucked up. So, yeah, already we're seeing that, and I don't see anyone trying to stop that.
For the record, conservatives are currently pushing for the election, voting minimum age to be raised to 25.
They would literally have to make a constitutional amendment to raise the voting age to 25. You know how hard it is to amend the U.S. Constitution, Xanderhole? I think you don't. It's designed to be all but impossible. That's why we still don't have, equal rights for women in the Constitution. The ERA has stagnated for decades, and it isn't even talked about, because it is designed to be the most agonizingly difficult process, and there's, no democratic input to any of it. Bernie's kind of shit on everything. I mean, it took serious shaming to get him to even to acknowledge that there was something fucked up about cops murdering random black people. And his response to the uprising in 2020 was to say, cops need more money. I mean, he actually sucks. He's also seriously anti-immigrant, which everybody forgets. And I could go on for a while. But it is time to wrap up. I'd just like to thank everybody for joining me. And let me just say, I'm gonna drop the link for where the hell is it? Yes. My current crowdfunded translation project, the works of Inessa Armand. And for anyone who hasn't already seen it, und gutes Pesach. For everyone who hasn't already seen the video explaining it, there's information on the description on how to support it, and any signal boosting and support is very much appreciated. And with that, I will see you next week.